Okay, this video deals with the manufacture of your wooden box for your AS coursework. The wood we're going to be using is a hardwood, a type of hardwood that's called Iroko. Iroko, if you look it up, you'll, something like Wikipedia, get an idea of the properties of it and why we're going to be using it, what makes it suitable. It's obviously a hard, durable material, has a natural kind of oily nature, which means it's very good against rot. Now you're going to be making a box this size with an acrylic sliding lid, and this is so that it ticks the boxes on the mark scheme associated with using a variety of materials and manufacturing methods. So let's look where we start. Your lid, incidentally, won't be engraved necessarily like this. That's going to be up to you to come up with some sort of specific design for yourself. This is very simply laser engraved. Once you've actually come up with the artwork, the laser cutter does it for you, but you will need to get the acrylic lid so that it actually fits within these grooves, and we'll explore that a little bit later. So the torch also, we deal with the manufacture of the torch in a separate set of videos. We'll set those things to one side just at the moment. Now we're going to be making this wooden box. It's got two supports inside that obviously hold the torch for you, and the first thing we're going to be starting off with is obviously manufacturing these four sides. Now they're in matching pairs, so this pair obviously matches this pair. If we use a ruler and get an idea of the size of these, we're going to be cutting these out at 83 millimeters, the two end pieces, and the longer sides are going to be cut down at 222 millimeters. So let's set this to one side for a moment. It all starts off with this length of material here, and you'll notice that it's got grooves already routed in it, and these grooves are going to be taking the base of the box and then that sliding acrylic lid that I showed you a minute ago. So we're going to be measuring off these then using the dimensions that I just talked about. We're going to then be cutting that using this combination of a bench hook, some of you will remember using this in year 7, and a tenon saw similarly. Now the bench hook we're going to be using obviously so that we don't cut into our table, and we're going to be using it as a stop. So we hold the material in it like this, and then obviously we cut down the side like that. Now I've got this one set up as a left-hander, but I'm conscious that you'll probably have it the other way up if you're a right-hander. So you're going to measure off then at, what was it that I said? You're going to measure off at 83 mil, and then you're going to be cutting off. Now I'm going to cut mine at slightly over because I'm going to be sanding this a little bit later in this video, so I want mine at slightly over. So we cut off our piece of material according to that dimension. And then you need another one like this, and then the two longer pairs, so that you end up with a set of material that looks like this. I've got two short pieces and then two long pieces. Okay. If we go back to the original box, you'll notice on the corners that we've got these 45-degree angles. Now this is called a mitre. So what you need to do then is mitre the ends of all this material so that it fits together more like a kind of picture frame on the corners. We'll deal with this short side again a little bit later. So to do that, to get the 45s on these, we're going to go over to the sanding machine. But it's important that you remember that the short sides need to be the sides that have the grooves on the inside. So if we look back at our example here, you'll notice that all the grooves are set on the inside of the box, which means that the angle needs to tip in so that the shorter sides have the grooves on the inside. Okay, so if we come over to our sanding jig's been set up on the table. You'll notice that it's got these two pieces of material that are set at 45 degrees for you. In order to get this right, you're going to be putting the grooved side on the inside facing the block, and we're going to then turn on the jig, our sander, so that we end up with this 45-degree angle on this edge. Okay, now that gets repeated on all of the sides, so that you end up then with a set of material that looks like this. Now, a good way to check whether you're right or not with your lengths is to put them back to back, and obviously then those points should match up, just to check that that's an even size, and then the same on these here. Right, I've cut one side down, and you'll remember from the example I showed you a moment ago, cut one side down because we want a shorter side so that when we slide in our lid, we end up with this hidden join like this. Okay, so we need to have that piece cut down shorter before we glue up. You can't try and cut it down once the whole box is glued up. Now we're going to be using PVA to glue this up. It's a good idea before you actually get into that and get into thinking about your base, just to have a dry assembly of this. So I'm going to put this together just to check that it fits, and it also makes it easier when you're coming to measure up your base. It is a bit fiddly. You might want to get someone to help you out with this. So we're going to be using this strap here, this load strap or ratchet strap, because it's going to hold this together nice and tightly for us, and we can check then whether the measurements are right, but also it's easier then to measure how big our base needs to be, because our base has to fit inside the grooves. So let's just crank this up. Okay, so that's now held in position for me. Now, I'm quite happy with the joins on the corner of that. You look on bottom, that's good, perfect match. So we then need to cut a piece of MDF, and you'll notice in this one here that we haven't used hardwood as such. We've used a piece of MDF, a piece of manufactured board that's going to go in there. Now that's for reasons of, again, using a variety of materials, which is what the mark scheme expects, but also for reasons of cost. There'd be no point putting an expensive piece of material right on the bottom there. Okay, so we're going to use the ruler again, and I would suggest that you push the ruler into the groove, and we know that the groove obviously enters that side, so we're looking at a base size of 71 by, again, push the ruler into the groove, by 25. So we need to get a 2mm thick piece of MDF that matches that size, and then we're going to put that in, and again, it's worth dry assembling that. So if we take that apart now, I've pre-cut mine for the sake of the video. Okay, so we can push that into there, push that into there. I'm going to just dry assemble this again, just to check that it fits. Because if the MDF base is slightly too big, then what you find is your miters won't actually fit close together, and obviously you want them nice and tight. Part of the assessment of this, when we're actually marking it, obviously relates to accuracy. So let's just put that back in there and check that we're happy with that. Pull that up on the ratchet. Okay, so yeah, so that's fine. All those miters meet up nicely. So we're ready to glue up then, and that's the first part of our box done. And we're going to be using PVA for that, which is the most popular type of wood glue, and I recommend that you get the PVA and feed the glue into the groove all the way along, okay, on all of the pieces, and then these parts here that are obviously going to be touching each other, you're going to need to make sure that you've got glue on those as well, so that when they're joined together, you're getting that good fixing. So you're going to want to put glue in all of the grooves, all the way around it, and all the pieces of material that are touching, and then you're going to put that together again with the ratchet strap. Okay, now I'm going to set that to one side, because you can see what you're meant to end up with. Obviously what we're then going to end up with is this. Now the only thing that I haven't covered is these little supports here. You remember when we had the torch in there, torch is obviously supported on those two pieces of material that have that kind of semicircle cut out of that. So let's look at how we're going to make that. We're going to take a square piece of material that fits the inside of our box. It's got to fit this dimension here. So I've got my square piece of material. You then need to find the centre of the piece of material, and the easiest way to do that is obviously by using a ruler and drawing a line from corner to corner, and where those two lines cross, you're then going to get that central point. Okay. Then we're going to take this type of drill bit. This is called a Forstner bit, but obviously it's a big drill bit in that it's going to remove that diameter of material. We're going to put that in the pillar drill, and then we're going to drill out using our central point, so that we end up with a piece of material that's got a hole all the way through it. It's going to look a little bit like this, like that. And I'm sure some of you have sat and guessed. The next thing we do is obviously saw that in half, so we end up then with our two pieces with our semicircles. Those then are put inside of our box. Now the only thing to watch out for is this dimension here. Okay, sometimes you're going to have to remove some of that material, because when you put your torch in the box, I'll show you on this example, if the torch is sat too high, what you find is when you try and push the acrylic lid in, it'll catch on the torch itself. So you do need to check before you glue these in that this dimension here isn't too much. Some of that may need to be sanded off before you glue in, but you need to check that with your torch. Okay, so that should have taken you through all of those construction things. It's important as you're producing this to think about quality control checks, and you'll remember that I was doing some quality control checks of mine, for example. After I'd sanded it, I was thinking about whether these were long enough or the right length. That was a quality control check. Also, the fact that I dry assembled it, I put the whole thing together without glue on it, was another quality control check. The fact that I cut the base and then assembled it again just to make sure that it fit. Okay, that was another quality control check. So as you're creating your plan for production, which is something that you can use this video for, you need to make sure you've got plenty of those checks recorded. You also need to remember that you've got to be using the correct technical language, things like bench hook, tenon saw. Okay, obviously you've got your ratchet strap. We're specific about the material, and we're saying that it's made of Iroko. We're not saying it's just made of wood. So at A level, that kind of expectation of specific materials mentioned is an important thing. Okay, hopefully that's been helpful.